everyone, and thanks for joining us for Higher Ed Matters, our podcast where we discuss all areas of marketing and as it relates to our college and university work. Our guests today are friends and strategic partners of Dynamite Candle Studios, Rob and Grant. Welcome.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to have this chat with you guys because high production value video sometimes feels like this sort of thing that's just out of reach for a lot of our college partners, right? We all kind of know we need it. We know we want it. It's the Tesla or the trip to Greece, or like no matter how much we try to fit it into our budget, despite our best efforts, it sometimes just gets like tucked into the back burner. You know, it feels like it's a heavy lift sometimes, and it also feels like an expensive lift. And it's really been your whole life, right? Like you guys have been doing video production, for your whole careers. How does video, unlike any other channel, sort of benefit a branding and marketing effort?
I feel that, especially in like the higher education category, there's nothing like video.
Yeah.
Compared to like a brochure or a website or something like that, right? Like, if I look at myself as a potential student looking for, where I'm going to end up, having something to look at where you can kind of see yourself in that environment, there's nothing more powerful than video. Right. And that goes anywhere from hearing it from a student talk about their experience or a faculty member to like a really polished or nice brand video or television spot. Right. There's something special about video and the motion and the music and the energy that you get there that can create a feeling that you don't always get from print.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I can't put it a whole lot better than that. I mean, it's to me, it was you had, you always had to tour a college, right? If you want to experience it, well, that's the next best thing. I mean, all we're missing is smell-o-vision at that point, right? Which, you're getting these senses, and Rob's point is like those mediums like stick with you too, and I think you can create something that has a feeling and really, it's something that people take with them, and it's also what's really neat about some of those video productions is you can use them in so many different ways. So like you can go out and collect this stuff and then it can be used in countless different ways.
Right. The versatility of whatever project it is that you're working on. You own and operate a studio now, but you also have worked as a team inside of an agency before, right?
That's where it all started.
Right.
Yeah, we built out a video team in an agency, and I think we learned a ton about how we do business now.
That agency experience was huge for us because I came from long form television storytelling, and when I pivoted over to agency life, what was great about it was just the variety of content that we produced and the variety of clients that we worked with, right? So, we were able to refine our skills on telling like really short form, like snack size, like type stories, and then like, longer brand videos or longer form content, different forms of narratives, all those kinds of things. So yeah, I mean, like the agency experience, I think really helped when we decided to go off on our own. We've produced projects for something that's already a campaign that's been developed and it's fully baked, and we jump in just to add some video content to it, or we've done videos that for clients that don't have that foundation of messaging, right? What's nice about when you go on like some of the stuff that we've done in the past for like Bear or Centene, we would go in and some of that heavy lifting would already be done in terms of the design work or the voice or the messaging. So we could just start, adapting how we tell our stories based on that, right? And then, it's kind of a safer place to start because then that's where you can start to have fun, and play with that messaging a little bit. What we ended up doing was we would go out on, maybe one shoot or a handful of shoots and develop like maybe a starter project that's motion, right? And that would be successful. We go on and do another one. And then after a while, when we got a routine going, and yes, video does cost money, right? There's a lot more moving parts than like, a lot of other elements, other formats. Once we got the ball rolling, we'd start developing a content library for our clients. And that's like where I think the sweet spot is, like for any client, for your clients, is being able to take those baby steps, get a routine going, see how well it works. And then next thing you know, you have like a footage library or motion graphics library, or all these motion assets that you can start mixing and matching. You can make smaller videos. You can make a new brand video based on like 2 years worth of content. I think that's where it starts to get special and you start to see a return in your investment.
So can that be potentially a way that some colleges and universities could at least start? That could be a starting point. That is just, we are just collecting footage at various points within, you want to show the student life, or you want to show move-in day, or all of these kind of fun points in the recruitment process that then could later be used in something that maybe is more put together.
Well, what I've noticed, and Grant, correct me if I'm wrong, is that usually it's helpful to have some sort of a foundation of a story
that you want to tell,
or a project that you want to start. Like maybe it's like 3 testimonial videos, something that's like
just something to drive it, right?
Yeah,
something
an anchor
to get you out there. I mean, it's almost like you got to have a plan to get out there. It's rare that somebody's like, let's just go out and collect footage.
Right.
I don't see that happen very often because somebody along the way goes, you know what, that's a lot of money. Let's not do that.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's not weird, I don't think, because there's no purpose for it. But when you have a purpose and people can see the end game, right? That's where you start to be like, okay, let's build a plan around this. So I think that's exactly the thing, is like, have something, whatever, as small as it may be. It's like, we want to do this one interview with this one person, and while we're there, we're going to shoot this, this, and this.
Gotcha.
Or, you plan it on a day where there's going to be an activity going on, and we're going to get that. Or we're going to get them walking through it, and we know we'll turn the camera to the sides, and we'll grab this, and we'll grab that. There's any number of ways to be really crafty in those situations about how you maximize your not only your time but your dollar, and really make the most of it. And we've done a lot of that stuff where you have to kind of get in the door essentially, and then you have to kind of be tricky about gathering more stuff. And I find, from our perspective, we usually go out on these things and we go out with a mindset of, even though we haven't been asked to get this stuff, we're going to try to get some things that we know have been mentioned in the lead up, even though that's not part of the plan. If we have the opportunity, we'll do that, because we know that there's going to be that moment when somebody goes, did anyone shoot so-and-so speaking at the event? And you're like, we did. And it's great because, as Rob alluded to earlier, it's like, you have all this stuff, and that kind of starts to create more opportunities for you, but also more ideas for a client, for a school, whoever that may be, to put out there. And these are ideas that are coming from the fact that, we got all this new stuff that we didn't plan on before. So, to me, it's a very organic way to kind of build those things. And
we're always trying to help clients stretch their dollar and maximize the money that they're putting into a project like that. Because again, you've already mentioned it's expensive, or it can be expensive. And a lot of crews that you hire, a lot of vendors you hire are going to be like a daily rate. So it's good to come up with or have an agenda, have that kind of foundation of storytelling, and then pick up other things while you're in the field. Right. And I think that's worked out really well. And I've seen some clients that you have that have already figured all this out, and they have a team on site that does go out and just collect the footage. Right. They have it down at this point where they know the events, they know those special moments, those locations and those types of students that they want to shoot, and they just pick them up all the time, and then they're able to throw videos together really easily.
Yeah. We have multiple clients that will have a small video team inside the marketing department that's maybe 1, maybe 2 people. What do you think, from your perspective anyway, is that the best role for them? And then where would we want to bring in a group like you to do a bigger kind of project? What's best for them to handle versus a professional videography studio?
It's a gray line there, but a lot of times, we'll have conversations around, hey, maybe a lot of times it starts honestly with a way to save money, right? Where we're going to have them gather some of this content for us. And also, these are a lot of times they're the pros of what's going on. When you walk into a school, it's that team that's there that's already capturing content. They're going to know, you got to go over here, and this is where you shoot, and over here is where the cool thing's going to happen. When the sun comes up, over there is where it looks cool. And you're coming in with just probably a little bit more of a creative concept around a thing. And they're great at, I've found, at helping you kind of get where you need to go and filling in some gaps. We've done a lot of things where we either brought somebody in-house on as part of our team, you know,
Right.
as part of our crew. We just work with them in gathering the content, and they gather stuff that we're not able to, because, you know, you're not going to pay us probably in a lot of times to show up, you know, every day of the week and, you know, be at all of these things, because it starts to, that's where you've already got a team on site, right, that's doing that.
Mhm.
So we find, you know, that's a great opportunity for us to go, hey, here's a list of some of our like thoughts that you might look at this stuff, and that's a way to work with a team like that. And you know, and just for me, it's having a conversation up front, you know, just figuring out, you know, hey, what are you guys good at? What do you like to do? What's the stuff that you guys really feel like you're nailing here? You know,
Right.
where can we kind of bring that to the next level?
Absolutely.
I feel like, you know, it's not really about us being a vendor and them being them. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
right.
Like, they are professionals at what they're doing.
Mhm.
And I feel like everybody in production has a different kind of skill set, right? It's totally cheesy, but like, I always say that, you know, in production, we're always learning, right? And like Grant mentioned,
true, though.
you know, like there are plenty of times where we take on a project where there's an element that's beyond our capabilities because we're not in that world. We can't be everything. Just like your in-house videographers at whatever institution it is can't be everything either, right? So when we go in, I always look at it like we're all on an equal level and we're part of the same team, right? Let's just maximize everyone's skill set. And then maybe we can come in and bring a special, different kind of way of shooting or stuff we've done in the past for you, you know, like bring in some higher end motion graphics to complement what's already been captured, you know?
Yeah, sometimes it's just about executing on a specific plan, right? That's kind of where we come in, because it's like we have an idea and we are going to do that specific thing, and we can use that help from those folks, you know.
It's one of my favorite things about the job is, you know, making friends and like, you know, getting together with like other people in our field and like solving problems and, you know, making something special and unique, right?
Absolutely. You know, speaking from personal experience and working with the two of you, you guys do a really good job with wrangling like this big idea into like an actionable plan. And I actually think that is something that even internal marketing teams, certainly our agency, but internal marketing teams at colleges and universities, they kind of potentially can get hung up on how to turn that big idea into step 1 and step 2. And I think you guys at least you helped me and our clients kind of get to that point. And I didn't know if you had any, you know, good advice on how you take that concept and you turn it into, okay, where do we start, you know, to get to the end result?
Oftentimes when you're putting together a project like that, it can be pretty overwhelming, right? I think, I guess I'll speak on our process. There's almost always a budget. So like for Grant and I, we have our own like kind of process on how we budget. So like once we get the basics, I'll usually start figuring out like, how can we put together all the elements that we need here to hit a ballpark budget that works for this client and still like hit the marks when it comes to the idea, you know? And if we don't have that, if we don't have a budget for starters or those kinds of guardrails, a lot of times, you know, before we even get into that big idea, we spend some time concepting and pitching a few different things, you know, see what sticks.
And a lot of times something out of that will inform what you're going to do. And, you know, I was going to add too, I think like that's a great way to kind of, it's a good example, I guess, of how that agency life kind of like hardened us a little bit in that sense where, you know, you go into a war room basically with like, we got all these ideas, we got to figure out what, you know, we're going to do for this client, you know, and we would be part of a lot of those, you know, and a lot of video teams, I feel like, aren't in on that level of the idea, you know, in those situations. And so we were really lucky we got to be in a lot of those and kind of help finesse where those ideas were going and be a part of that process. And, you know, you do that enough times, you start to learn that, you know, it's not necessarily a thing that you're going to get right or wrong necessarily, but, you know, it's getting to an idea that you're like, okay, that's something we can work with, and taking big ideas and refining them down, which is, I guess there's no easy way to say, here's how that you do it. Here's how it is accomplished. No, it's, you know, you just start to get more fearless about it, right? I think.
Yeah.
Sometimes that backfires though, right? Yeah. Like we have had clients that are like, we've got a big idea. Yeah. Let's make the video, you know? And then we put together all the elements and we're like, here's here is,
Yeah.
what it will be and how,
Right.
how much it costs to execute this grand idea. And then they're like, no, thanks.
Yeah.
And there's not any option to go back and like bring it down. Almost always we're able to like work with the clients and work on budget and figure out, that sweet spot that makes everybody happy. But sometimes like, if you don't have those guardrails and you just turn in like a proposal, they're like, you're too expensive, and that's it.
Yeah, which is a bummer because I think that, even the price tags that, we've talked through in some of our, ideas and pitches and thoughts with our clients, it might be a pretty decent number to get that video or those series of videos, but I feel like it has just so much mileage in the recruitment space for colleges and universities, right? Like whatever, like 5-10 years ago, like I probably would have not suggested to a client that they should shoot like a high production TV spot because the only option at that time was like traditional television, and your traditional television spot's going to air to a 7-year-old watching Nickelodeon and also a grandma watching Wheel of Fortune, and they just don't have the budget to get that many impressions to people that aren't going to be their target market. So, but now we have options to run hyper-targeted TV spots on CTV and OTT and social media and website and YouTube. And there's just so, video is how students are consuming information. So it seems like it's become the balance is kind of shifting a little bit. It feels like where this is where the investment should be. We should be looking at this more than we would have 5-10 years ago because of the usability of it.
Totally. Like, and it's at the point where it's almost unusual not to have some sort of video content.
Right.
But like, I feel like there's a confidence that you have when you have like really good video content out there, right?
Yeah.
It almost pulls back the curtain on, what happens on campus.
Right.
It's a door opener on a different level than a written description or whatever. So, I mean, like, there's always ways, if you don't have like a huge budget, there are other ways to tell stories that are budget friendly that are still effective. You know what I mean?
Whenever we put together a budget and we look at it and we're like, oh, this is not going to be a number that they're going to want to look at, but it's what they asked to see. We always say, and I always harp on it. It's like, let's make sure they understand that this is a conversation starter. Let's talk about it. Let's get it in front of them. And like, you don't like the number? Let's figure out what number you do like and how to get there and what things we're going to sacrifice or get crafty on. And sometimes, to Rob's point earlier, sometimes people see that number and they're like, oh, okay, bye-bye. I go.
Yeah.
Have a nice life.
Yeah, they're just done and they're not into it. And that's unfortunate because for us it is kind of like, hey, let's talk about it because we're clever people, and we want to make the videos for you. We want to figure out a way. And I think Rob's right. There's always a way. There's always a way to do something, no matter what it is. Because part of what it is just thinking about what you're going to do. And once you've got the idea, if it's a good idea, it kind of doesn't matter. And I say that because a lot of people are like, well, if we don't have money, we'll just shoot it on a phone. And I don't have a problem with that inherently. What I think it's more about, it's less about, well, it doesn't matter. The phone is either going to, work for the project or it's not. It's more about have the idea. And then let's figure out, okay, does this work this way? I'm sure there's a way that we can figure out how to make this content work. It's not so much about what camera you're going to shoot it on or whatever, any of that stuff, to me anyway. And anymore, you can really capture content on literally anything you want.
You were kind of talking about branding and how having really slick video is like this brand reinforcer, right? Even for your internal audiences potentially, right? Like to kind of see yourself, your alma mater, the college you go to as an employee, like that visual storytelling even back at you about your own brand that you live, and breathe every day, I also think is a really important part of a college or university, because there's that inherent, we've often said, even in other episodes, right, that colleges and universities are particularly unique, because everyone associated with them, not just the students, has a higher level of like pride in the brand than you might find any corporation, you know, like the people that work there, the faculty, the staff. There's a deeper level of buy-in in what they're doing and who they work for. That I think that video is another way to kind of like capitalize on that and grow that sort of like internal buy-in and create brand ambassadors. So I think that it's a piece that we need to be doing more with, really, with colleges and universities.
Yeah, that's a totally good point. You know, it's not just outward facing stuff. It's stuff to kind of keep the hype going internally, right? And let's face it, a lot of people say they don't, but people like to see themselves on camera, right?
Absolutely.
It's really neat to see, yourself in a nice finished video, you know? And that just goes back to, start small or start with something manageable. It doesn't have to be small, and start those video projects and start building them. And next thing you know, somebody like Grant, who's shooting, is capturing all the students, but also capturing footage of the faculty, and just it becomes its own ecosystem of storytelling.
Right. Well, and I think we were recently talking about a project that you did that was it was a video version of a presentation, right? Like it kind of like something that plays while someone is presenting. And I think that, college admissions recruiters, college presidents, they do a lot of presentations, and they do a lot of presentations one right after the other with their competitors potentially, right? So
Sure, yeah.
Having a short, presentation that is, animated, moving, I don't know, just more than a PowerPoint seems also like a potential no-brainer that, I want mine to stand out of the 7 that a student hears in a college night.
100%. And I think just the same way you're talking about how a big flashy, brand reinforcing video is going to work for your emotions, and helping you feel like, this is my brand.
Right.
Seeing that, you're going to be like, oh, that's aspirational. I want to be part of that. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, there is, and you can't fight it. There's something to that where it's like, oh, well, that's the cool one. I mean, we can go, well, this school's got well, that's the cool one.
Right. Yeah.
There is something to having that extra thing, and of course then you can deliver on everything else too. That's also great.
Sure.
And I think, for us, that was born out of just people will often say, hey, we're doing a PowerPoint. We want to insert this or this video thing in there. And that system to us was always kind of like, it's a little clunky and it's not going to present well. And it's not, for us, it wasn't so much that I'll do whatever you need, but I didn't ever feel like it looked good when people, had that in their presentations. And so we kind of started looking at what are the other options to like move things around on screen, and kind of make this a more dynamic thing, and so that for us was a big discovery place, where we started, there's other software out there that you can use, and it actually, you're going to use it the same way you'd use PowerPoint as a presenter. But for us, we develop content on the back end that's all motion. It's all slick 3D animation, 2D animation.
It's interesting that you brought that up. A big part of higher education is the campus tour, right? And I would assume that most establishments have their token handful of people that come up and do a lot of the same presentations every time. And this client that we're lucky enough to work with, they have this same kind of situation at their business, where they always have investors coming in. They have, third parties coming in to see all the cool things that they do. And they have like people that staff that really they're the only, like this one person's the only person that can really talk about this one thing. Right. And so what we did with these videos that Grant's talking about is we did a very high-end capture of their typical presentation.
Right.
And it already, like, as soon as like we hadn't delivered it yet, and we got an email that this person's not going to be here tomorrow. Can you please send us the rough cut right now so we can show the investors because they're not here? And what happens is, maybe you have 3 out of 4 people physically there, and that, let's face it, that's the most engaging thing that you could ever do is real face-to-face presentations. But that one person wasn't there, so we have a video of her there anyway, right? And I feel like, that's something that you could really benefit from in the higher education space, like that virtual tour almost as an alternative or a companion to what's already going on when people show up.
But that with video, couldn't we potentially, because sometimes we will work with admissions and sometimes it's marketing and sometimes it's alumni, potentially we can tell that story with kind of one kind of base story, but then also be using these potential budget line items to tweak it a little bit for each of those audiences, right? Like, so that there's an alumni version of it, there's that recruitment version of it, there's a president's version of that story or video that can really get the most out of the investment that we made initially.
Absolutely. I mean, we've done things before where you're going to swap out a few shots, or you're going to change out a few voiceover lines, or even just the end card at the end might change, new logo at the end.
Right.
There's any number of things you can do where you can stretch that content, you know, and some of that stuff we've found a lot of times, and that's what I was saying earlier too, is that you kind of figure it out as you go. As they start going, they're like, you know what would be perfect for this? That piece we shot 3 months ago, and let's just change out the logo, or let's put this new little shot in there, and it'll be perfect. And I mean, I find we're doing that all the time. You know, it's, oh, we have a new way to use that video. Now we have another way. And these things kind of just, you know, organically start to evolve into other things.
Yeah, and you might, along those lines, you might do a quick pickup shoot. You know, you've already got, the video's already 80% there, and you just need to add that specific element of the story for that specific audience that will play on a channel that only they see, where they won't see the other version, right? So yeah, there's all kinds of ways to do it. It's, again, that is what you want to do to leverage video,
right?
You know, just benefit off what you already paid for.
So when a marketing team or an admissions office or whomever might be thinking about, this is really something that we, you know, need to think about, and before they kind of come to the table with an agency or a group like yours, what are the kind of like details that they should know?
Keep it simple.
I think that's the that's the high level, and I think that kind of goes across the board, you know, on some level with some of this stuff, is keep it simple, but you know, it's good to have an idea, you know, as Rob said before, you know, when you don't know what you want to do, and it's like, we just want to make a video,
right?
It's hard, you know, and
it's
tough to kind of. I always say I like it when there's a box. I like it when there's a lane to kind of stay in, because I find that you get way more creative in that small space. It's like when the world is your, you know, you can do anything you want. This is your stage. This is where you're pulling from. It's like, okay, well, it's going to take a lot longer to refine it down. And when we kind of have an idea of our playground, that really helps. And that's a vague comment because it could be anything, but just having an idea, you know, having an idea of what you want to do. It doesn't hurt to have an idea of what you'd like to spend. That may evolve and change as we talk about it, because you may realize, oh, I came in with expectations that this was going to be less expensive or more expensive, whatever that is. And it's good to have an idea, though, because that can inform, and we could go, okay, well, we're not in that ballpark, we're in this ballpark. You know? At least big positioning changes as far as that goes can help.
If someone is thinking about having a video, that idea had to come from somewhere, and they probably saw something that influenced that idea, right? So a reference video is always great, just to have so it's something that everyone can look at together, and we can help explain why that was expensive, or why if you do that, that would be expensive, but maybe we can do it this way, you know, and that kind of thing. So
it is often that conversation, and I think that's okay, though, because a lot of people's reference is, I like what Coca-Cola did.
Right.
All right. Well, you know, that's going to cost you.
I want it to be like the Matrix.
Because a lot of times those are the conversations you got to have. But a reference video is great because it not only gives you an idea of kind of what the influence was, but maybe the kind of just the type of video that they're reacting to. And I think they're very effective. You can get a couple reference videos, even better, you know, but just having something to look at a lot of times helps us kind of narrow down and find our box.
Yeah. That's great.
But there's a lot of stuff that comes to mind, like, you know, who's participating in the video? Are you going to tell this person to be in it, or are you going to get people that actually want to be in it? Right. There's a lot of times where we might we'll be involved, like producing content with somebody that was instructed to be there, right? And they don't want to be there. And that's how it looks on camera, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I think there's there has to be a certain kind of attitude and a willingness to take direction from people like us, again, just because we've been knocked down plenty of times, so we kind of understand what the lookouts are. You know, what we find sometimes with clients is that when they are forking over the money to make a video project, they want to try to get as much information crammed into that video as possible.
Right.
Or that series of videos, right?
Sure.
And so a lot of times, like one of the things that we're always trying to advise against is don't overload your content full of information, right? You want to have like simple messaging, simple moments. You want things to be effective. And you don't want like a video that's like 8 minutes long.
Right.
With everything you ever wanted to talk about.
Because nobody walks away with anything. You put too many people in a life raft and it sinks, I mean, it's just a lot of times the kind of video content we're creating, and this is not going to be every time, and a lot of the time we're trying to tell one thing, two things, three things. We're trying to get across a couple key points and help people take away a feeling.
The viewer has an attention span, and you lose them if you start just hammering them with information. What you want to do, if you have all these different things you want to talk about, is make like, maybe a series of shorter videos or something like that, to get all those things across in an effective way.
I think that's great advice. You mentioned that you kind of spent a lot of time in like long form television storytelling. How does that translate? How does that advice translate from the long format to a 1.5-minute video? Like, you know what I mean? Like your experience in that kind of realm.
A lot of times when I was writing and producing shows for like Discovery or National Geographic, you were trying to fill the 55-minute time span. Dig back into the content to find one more engaging piece of information to get you to the end.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And we would find at least I found back when I worked in television that it's harder to make shorter content that's effective when you've been doing that for so long. You get a lot better at sacrificing things that seem important when the viewer that's never seen your rough cut won't know any different.
Right.
And if they liked it and they want more and they were like, that's it, but they loved it, that's better than turning it off, halfway through something that
Shutting
everyone
down.
worked on so hard.
Leave them wanting more.
Yeah.
Gotta leave them wanting more. Long form story content too. A lot of times you're stretching out to Rob's point. You're like digging in deeper on a story, on several stories. And you're seeing a lot more detail in that. Whereas I think in these short form videos, we're really trying to just kind of go boom, boom, boom. Here's what you need. Here's what you need to know. Here's what you got to take away with it. And it's two totally different things. Obviously, but it is hard to like transition from one to the other because we've done stuff where we've had to do a longer form content thing, and we're like,
what else can we say? That's really an interesting example, though, because we often will, when we are kind of auditing communication, like other types of communication for a college or university, there is that sort of tendency to feel like you have to tell someone the whole story every time in every piece of content, right? Like in an email and a brochure, and we, all of it has to say everything. And it doesn't. You do want them to pay attention to the next email, right? We don't need to repeat that information. Same with the video. Like we do want them to be just enough interested or memorable to get more information elsewhere.
I said it earlier, it was kind of cheesy, but it's part of an ecosystem, right?
Right.
Like the video should complement something else. A lot of times when we start to get overloaded in our videos, I'll ask the question like, is this going to live on a landing page? Where is this going to be? Yeah. Where it could be complemented with text on a website, or where you can get some of this boring stuff out of the video and just, make it really easily digestible in a different way.
Right.
Like posted right next to the video.
That is a great point, is remembering how it's going to be used a lot of times opens doors to, we don't have to cram this chunk of text in here. We don't have to put this in here because it's going to be on the page right next to it. And a lot of times it's a duh kind of moment. Duh, okay, great. And everybody figures it out and it works out.
Well, this has been a great conversation. Seriously, thank you so much.
We love working with you guys, and that's so nice to have us on.
Yeah, absolutely.